We're in Matthew chapter 5, verse 8, and what I'd like to do is begin reading in verse 1 of Matthew chapter 5, and then we're going to stop at verse 8. Now there are 8 Beatitudes. We're coming to the end. We're starting to work our way down. So next week we have Blessed are the Peacemakers, and then the last week of this series, which is going to come at the end of this month, I'm excited that Brian Fries is going to be preaching on blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, and really looking forward to finishing out this series and having Brian preach and bring God's word to us. So this morning we begin in Matthew chapter 5 verse 1. If you don't have a Bible, you can grab one. Should be one in the pew around you, or you can use your smart device if you have a Bible app there. Or you can always Google Matthew chapter 5, and probably an app or a website like Bible Gateway may be one of the first places that pulls up, and you can click on that and get to God's Word. So in Matthew chapter 5 verse 1, at this point Jesus goes up onto a mountain. Seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain. So there was a definite article there, the mountain, and Matthew and his readers would have most likely known exactly where Jesus was at this time. And he takes the posture of a rabbi. He sits down, and his disciples gather around him, and there were crowds as well in addition to his disciples. And then in verse 2 of Matthew chapter 5 it says that Jesus opened his mouth and he taught them, saying. Now in verse 3 we have what he taught them, and this is called the Beatitudes, typically referred to. It comes from a Latin word that means blessing. So Jesus is talking about what God's blessing is in the life of a person. These are characteristics. And that's very important for us, because this fundamentally is very different. This is one of many things that makes Christianity unique in the world. I would argue with you, submit to you, I'm not going to argue with you, but for the sake of argument, that every other religion in the world, you can make yourself that. There are certain things that you do to become whatever that religious worldview is. And if you do it well, and if you do it consistently, then you follow all of the tenets of whatever the religious worldview is, and then you are that. So if you want to become a Muslim, Islam is, the religion of peace. If you want to be a Muslim, one who practices Islam, there are 5 pillars, and you do them, and you become a Muslim. Well, in the Beatitudes, there is a reason that Jesus starts off this way on the Sermon on the Mount, because there are going to be some do's that come. There are going to be some imperatives, some action. You need to do this. But the action is always based on, the imperative is always based on the indicative. The action always comes because of the heart, the characteristic, the essence. This is who you are, which is also one of the major distinctions, I would say the distinction of Christianity, is that it is founded upon grace. How do you become a Christian? It is not by attending church. How do you become a Christian? It is not by following certain indicatives, certain laws. And if you do them, and do them well, and do them long enough, then you are a Christian, or you'll become that. No, it's by grace. And the Beatitudes, even in the structure of the Sermon on the Mount, this is true here. Jesus is giving us essence, characteristics. This is who you are as a Christian, which is why he begins in verse 3 of saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom." He begins with, Christianity begins with an admittance that I've got nothing to offer God. I am poor in spirit. I'm broke. I've got nothing to offer. Good. You're in a good spot. You're in a good starting place. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. So the mourning there is mourning over your sin, mourning over your poverty of spirit. Blessed are those who are meek, for they shall inherit the earth. This is not trying to put up any defense with God, not trying to declare yourself before Him, but this is a bowing and a humility low before Him. And then blessed, verse 6, are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. And now there's this longing in me to be something that I'm not, which is righteous. This is what the Reformers called an alien righteousness. Alien being it's foreign. It has to come from outside of me because I don't have it in me. I'm already poor in spirit. I've acknowledged that. And blessed are you when you're hungering and thirsting for a righteousness that you don't have, because you're going to be satisfied. And then verse 7, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. The merciful, those who are full of mercy, have received mercy. And now they're showing mercy and they receive mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. And then in verse 8 this morning, where we find ourselves, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Now, I'd mentioned before that there are 2 of these 8 Beatitudes that for me personally stick out above the rest. And it's not because I think they're better, but this is just personal, a personal longing to see more of this in my life, a personal truth and beauty to 2 particular Beatitudes. One is blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because constantly I find myself going after, at least in my mind, things that I think are going to bring satisfaction to me, and then being reminded that there is nothing in this world that can satisfy outside of Jesus Christ. C.S. Lewis said, the man who has everything and God is no better than the man who has nothing and God, because God alone is our satisfaction. And it is a truth, blessed are those who hunger and thirst, that as often as you try, that you hunger and thirst to be satisfied, and you go after anything and everything under the sun to try to bring that satisfaction, you're always going to be found wanting and wanting more, because nothing in this earth can. You were created for God. And so I love that beatitude. I preached it a few weeks ago. I don't want to preach it again this morning. But the other one, the second one that I love, is this one. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see the Lord. And the reason that I love it is because I find in it, in verse 8, a promise that helps fight temptation for me, because this is true over and over and over again. And you can put the Lord to the test here, and you will find Him faithful. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see the Lord. What does that mean for us this morning? That's what I want to talk about. 3 significant meanings to this one promise. First is that the heart is our biggest problem and our biggest need. Jesus goes to the matter, straight to the matter, to the core of who we are. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the pure in heart. He doesn't say blessed are the religiously observant. Blessed are the faithful church attenders. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say blessed are the morally upright. Blessed are the people that cross all the T's and dot all the I's, and they are morally upright. See, you have to understand too, in the context, Jesus is talking to His disciples, Jesus is talking to the crowds, and they lived and existed in a time where there were a group of men, Pharisees, who were teachers of the law, and they were morally upright. At one place, Jesus says that when they teach on the law, when they speak, listen to them, but don't do what they're doing. Don't follow their example because it's superficial. They're doing what the law says, and their hearts are far from God. So Jesus calls them whitewashed tombs. He's talking to the religious, to the morally upright, whose hearts are far from God. And he doesn't say, blessed are the morally upright. He doesn't say, blessed are the circumstantially comfortable. See, the idea that if you're faithful to God, your life will be smooth, that you will be comfortable, that He'll make everything work out the way that you want it to, that's no new teaching, although that's prevalent all over our society, in many of our churches. And Jesus doesn't say, blessed are the circumstantially comfortable. Blessed are the people whose kids never get sick. Blessed are the people who never have to wonder about where the next paycheck's going to come from. Blessed are the people who can pay the bills before they send you the colored envelopes. That's when I pay mine, because I know that's when they're really serious. They want their money. He doesn't say, blessed are the circumstantially comfortable. That smooth paths, smooth sailing. He doesn't say, blessed are the well-intentioned. He doesn't say, blessed are the doctrinally acute. And I think I've said this here before. We'll certainly talk about it when we deal with our series coming up this year on temptation. But I would argue with you that demons have their doctrine pretty well worked out. Blessed are the doctrinally acute. Doesn't say that. He doesn't say, blessed are the emotionally passionate. So I just really feel, oh, well then you must be in the right. No, he doesn't say that. There's one of my favorite proverbs says, zeal without knowledge is not good. You might feel really strongly about something. Blessed are the emotionally zealous, emotionally passionate. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, blessed are the people who are postured for public praise. Man, you're just a really great guy. I know. He doesn't say that's the blessing. He says, blessed are the pure in heart. And so he's getting at both our problem and our need. See, wherever your biggest problem is, simultaneous, it will show you your greatest need. So let's think about it from the standpoint of our society and our culture. We think that our biggest problem is education. So if we can simply educate everybody, then that will take care of the problem. So the problem is a lack of education. It shows us our need. We've got to educate everybody, and then our society will progress. We'll get better. Or we think it's health care. So our greatest problem is a lack of affordable health care for everybody. So that simultaneously shows us our need and then our pursuit to fix our problem. And if we can get everybody healthier. There's a line from Talladega Nights with Ricky Bobby where he says, I know that the mortality rate's 100%, but given my high level of income and the advancement of modern science, I figure I'll live to at least 300 or 400 years old. I love that line. At least 300 to 400 years. So if we can just, make life better medically, then that's our biggest problem. We take care of that. And Jesus addresses our biggest problem. Blessed are the pure in heart. Jeremiah 17:9, you'll see this on the screen. It says this, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? So when Jesus says, blessed are the pure in heart, He's not talking about the way that we typically think about heart, which is, exclusive to our feelings, to our emotions. He's talking about the core of who we are. And really that's all of us. It's the intellect, it's the emotions, it's the will, intellectual, emotional, volitional, that all of that kind of comes together. And so when Jesus says, blessed are the pure in heart, he's talking about the whole person. Everything that makes you you. Your thinking, your feeling, your doing. And so this isn't just, again, blessed are the well-intentioned, or blessed are the emotionally passionate, or blessed are the doctrinally acute. It's all of who we are. Blessed are the pure in heart. And then when we come back to Jeremiah 17:9, we realize that the fundamental place of my heart, apart from the grace of God, is bankrupt, is wickedness, is deceitfulness, is sickness. Who can understand it? And when Jesus tells us, blessed are the pure in heart, this means that a pure heart has a sole, single focus. Purity of heart. There was a book title by the Danish philosopher, poet, author Søren Kierkegaard that I think sums it up well. The title of a book that he wrote was Purity of Heart is to Will One Thing. And the one thing is what's attached to this beatitude. The beatific blessed vision is to see God. Purity of heart is to will one thing, and that it is that I might see God. Purity of heart, the definition of what it means is found even within this one single verse, which is to see God, to will one thing, to see Him. In James 4:8, I think there's a parallel here where James says this, draw near to God and He will draw near to you. And I want you to see this about this second part of this verse. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. So within James 4:8, I would say as a parallel to Matthew 5:8, you find a definition about what purity of heart means. It's not to be double-minded. It's to be single-minded, single-focused. This is spiritual tunnel vision that Jesus is actually advocating for. Have you ever seen what tunnel vision looks like? This is what tunnel vision looks like. So somebody that has this distortion in their vision, this is the way that they look at the world around them. Now, none of us would want that physically, but this is the very thing that Jesus is advocating for spiritually, is that our eyes would be so focused and fixed and closed in on Jesus that everything else around us is a blur. You remember the old song, Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus? I'm not going to sing that for you. No, I'm not going to do it. Don't beg me. And the things of this earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace. This is spiritual tunnel vision. And that's what James is saying, that a double-mindedness is a contrast to a purity of heart. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see. They will see the Lord. Purify your hearts, you double-minded. So Jesus says it later on in the Sermon on the Mount, in chapter 6, verse 24. He puts it this way: no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and your money. It doesn't work that way. God will have no usurpers to the throne. He will not share His glory with another. And you will either serve God or you will serve another God. And this is the single-mindedness, the sole focus, the spiritual tunnel vision that Jesus is advocating for in Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. Blessed are those who are pure in heart. And why are they blessed? because they will see the Lord. To see the Lord is why we pursue purity of heart. This is the second focus for us in this verse. What is Jesus saying to us? That to see the Lord is why we pursue. Years ago, I came across an analogy that was used in a sermon by James Montgomery Boyce. Donald Gray Barnhouse. He was a pastor of a church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Donald Gray Barnhouse, and he used this illustration. He said, can you imagine what the world would look like if Satan was given free rein? Now, some of you might be thinking, about like today. Well, that's not what Donald Gray Barnhouse said in this sermon famously. He said if Satan was given free rein in the world, he said most people would think that it looks like rampant drug addiction, drug use, everybody selling on the streets, prostitution galore, rampant prostitutes everywhere. You can't leave your door unlocked at night. You walk out of the house and you got to make a beeline to your car because you're not sure you're not going to get shot. You have to lock your doors on your car because if you happen to leave it in your driveway and the doors are unlocked, all your stuff will be gone in the morning. And just everybody in fear because of all the rampant wickedness and evil all around them all the time. But Barnhouse said, but that's not what the world would look like. If Satan had his way, he said you would leave your doors unlocked at night. You would walk out in the morning and your neighbor would greet you, hello, neighbor. It's kind of like the Truman Show with Jim Carrey, just you wouldn't worry about leaving your car unlocked in the street. Nobody would use drugs. Nobody would sell themselves. No prostitution, no drug addiction. Everybody well educated. And no Jesus. He said it would be pristine, it would be clean, and it would be Christless. The greatest blessing that you and I can know is the very presence of God. And if you can imagine a world where God isn't, that world is hell. And what makes heaven beautiful, what makes it heaven, is the very presence of God with the stain of sin removed. To see Him. So Peter says it in 1 Peter 3:18 this way, that Christ suffered once, the righteous for the unrighteous, that He might bring us to God. And heaven without God isn't. And your life without God is hell. To see Him is why we pursue purity. It's the very reason. Number 6, 24 to 26. We ended the service last week with, this is the Aaronic Aaron, the priest. This is the Levitical blessing, the Aaronic blessing. And it says this, the Lord bless you and keep you. This is from Numbers chapter 6, 24 to 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift His countenance upon you and give you peace. And the reason that this was the blessing that was used by the priests over the Israelites is because the blessing is the very gaze of God, to look upon Him, for Him to look upon you, for you to see Him. And the promise is that we will see Him when we are pure in heart. This means that the best thing that can happen for us is to look upon Him with eyes that are unstained by sin and wickedness. And so there is this double element here, just like in all the Beatitudes, of this kind of now and one day in each one of these. There's present and there's future. Future is that one day we are going to see Him in all of His glory. Matthew chapter 17 is an interesting place where Peter, James, and John go up with Jesus onto a mountaintop, and they experienced Christ in the flesh the way that we will by faith one day in the flesh in all of His glory. And it was so good that Peter said, let's pitch tents here. Let's camp out. This is great. I don't want to leave this place. Peter, James, and John saw Jesus the way that one day we will, glorified. Now we walk by faith, one day by sight. We will see Him. And the words cannot express the heaven that is going to be. And so that's the future. The now is that I need a heart that is pure. Because the promise is that I will not see Him apart from purity of heart. So how do I do that? How do I do that? And David prayed it in Psalm 51. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Lord, make me what I'm not. Give me what I don't have. And that's grace. That is the heart of the good news of Jesus Christ, is that He will and He must for you to see Him. And then in your day-to-day, in my day-to-day, this is a promise to us. Why do I pursue purity? To see Him, to see Him, to see Him, to see Him more. Why do I pursue purity? To see Him. And apart from that, there's no sight. Apart from that, I won't. So I begin by grace of the heart that God gives me. And then I pursue holiness. I strive for purity, not for purity's sake, but for Christ's sake. Let me give you an example of how this plays out in real time. Current statistics, ages 18 to 34-year-old persons, men and women, 18 to 34 years old of age. Do you know what percentage view pornography regularly? I'll give you the number, 70. 70%. 18 to 34-year-olds currently. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see the Lord. 18 to 34-year-olds, 70% regularly view pornography. It is an addictive drug that is accessible with your handheld device with one click. And you line up 10 18 to 34-year-olds, and statistically speaking, 7 of them are regularly hitting that button, making that click. Now, what do you say to the person? What do you say to yourself? When faced with, what am I gazing upon? And I think the ultimate problem in the heart of the matter issue is that something has become fundamentally more beautiful than a vision of Jesus. Now, there's much more that can be said about that, but the heart of the matter is that fundamentally, a gaze is fixed on what is attractive, and it ain't Christ. And my problem is that beholding Jesus needs to be the most beautiful picture that my mind and that my heart can conceive of. The way that Jesus talks about this in story form comes from Matthew chapter 13, and he says it this way: the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy he goes and he sells all that he has and he buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value went and sold all that he had and he bought it. That Jesus and a vision of him becomes so beautiful, so valuable, so worthy that I would give everything that I have to have him. And that's the fuel, that's the source. So when I say that this promise in Matthew chapter 5 verse 8 holds sway to fight temptation, is that when the temptation comes to click, when the temptation comes to look, when the temptation comes to look again, when the temptation comes to attach myself to something else less beautiful, less glorious, less worthy, less valuable, I'm reminded of this promise. Do I want to see him? The pure in heart see him. And I can't tell you how many times, how many people that I've talked to and worked with and provide counsel to over the years who are caught up in this massive current of pornography, which collectively sells more in our country than the NFL, Major League Baseball, and NBA combined revenue per year. The porn industry, if you added all those three sports together, the porn industry sells more annually than the major leagues, NBA and NFL combined. It is our national pastime. And how many Christian guys that I know struggle in their personal walk with Christ, and I want to know God more. Feel like I'm distant from him. I'm struggling in my relationship with him. And there's this secret sin that has captured their vision. You want to see him more? You want to know him more? Blessed are the pure in heart. They will see him. And you can't have it both ways. Better to gouge out your eye or lose one of your members than to burn in hell. Jesus says that a little bit later on in the Sermon on the Mount. And you can't have it both ways. And then my question is, are you fighting? Are you fighting that drug? Are you fighting that addiction? What are you doing in your fight? What's it worth to you? What's your soul worth to you? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see the Lord. So why do we pursue purity? It's to see him. And this is a promise. You pursue purity in your life. Draw near to God, and he will draw near. Hello? There I am. Thank you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you double-minded. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see him. So the last thing I want to say here this morning is that seeing the Lord is how we pursue purity. So seeing the Lord is the why, seeing the Lord is the how. Now again, granted, this is overview. But blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see the Lord. So how do we do that? We look upon him. Seeing the Lord is the how. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. And again, I think about this with my kids, just simple illustration. My kids love video games. I know they're abnormal. Most kids don't. Mine do like video games. And we try to limit our screen time so the kids, they don't play video games during the week. They get Friday after they get home from school, and they get Saturday. And then even then we have to limit that, because we finally when they were getting up on Saturday at 5:30 in the morning, standing at the foot of our bed, we realized, wait a second, we can't do that during the week. What's the deal? They know they got video games on. Okay, it's after 9 a.m. You can play video games on Saturday morning. And I think about, they're playing a video game, and they're struggling to win a game. And if they said, "Hey, Dad, can you help us beat the game?" Now I would be addicted to games. I only do it with the kids, because when I've done it by myself, you'll find me at 4 a.m. after an all-nighter trying to beat that game. So I only do it with the kids for relationship. That's why. And so they're struggling to beat a level. Like, okay, have you gotten, the special tool, like the special device, the thing that you need to be able to beat the level? Well, no, we didn't get the thing. Well, why would you think you could beat the level without the thing? We just thought we could. I want to know God. I want to see him. I want to relate to him. I want to have a growing relationship with him. I have this longing, this hunger in me. Are you drawing near to him? Well, no. Why would you think that you're going to grow in your intimacy, in your relationship, and your walk with him if you're not drawing near to him? Are you confessing hidden sins that nobody else knows about? Are you active in the fight against those things? Are you double-minded? Are you cleansing your hands? Are you purifying your heart? No. Something doesn't compute there. That doesn't make sense. Draw near to the Lord. What are your eyes fixed upon? Where's your gaze? And then how does that look in real time, day in and day out? When was the last time you hit your knees and you cried out to the Lord? When was the last time you prayed? What are you currently reading in his word, in the scriptures? And then how is that word reading you? What's God teaching you and about himself from his word? I'm really reading my Bible. How are you drawing near to him? Because that's the promise. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see the Lord. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Hebrews 12:14 says, and I think we have it here for you, strive for peace with everyone and for holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. Now, order is everything here. This is important, because when Hebrews 12:14 says, strive for peace with everyone and for holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. This is the same thing as Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see the Lord. Without holiness, you will not see him. Now, the real-time application of that is your pursuit. But the eternal consequence of that is that this is as true as Matthew 5:8 is. That if there is not a fundamental core change of your heart evidenced in your pursuit of holiness, then you will not, future, see the Lord. If the gospel of grace has not created a transformation of your hunger and thirst and your fundamental appetite, you have never met Jesus. You have not experienced the grace of a heart change that sets you on a new course. To see the Lord is how. It's how we are changed. It's how we pursue purity. Because with a single-mindedness, with spiritual tunnel vision, we pursue holiness. Now, granted, that is not going to be the same pace for everyone. And in your Christian life, you will find yourselves at different plot points along the way, but it is the same path for everyone by grace through faith who will see the Lord. You might find yourself at a different position and a different pace from the other Christians around you, but it is the same path. And if you're not on that path, you will not see the Lord. So to see Him, to set our eyes upon Him in our pursuit, this is gospel obedience. This is a pursuit of holiness because. And I say because with emphasis to highlight for us that the gospel is not antithetical to obedience. It's not. The gospel of grace sets us free to obey. Paul says it in 2 Corinthians 5:9, that I make it my aim to be pleasing to the Lord. I want to. I want to pursue Him. See, everybody, and I fundamentally Martin Luther taught this, everybody is worshiping someone or something. And that thing that you worship, at its core, you believe can save you. So if you're worshiping a relationship, it's because you feel like this other person can save you. If you're worshiping money, it's because you believe that money will save you from a life that you don't want to live. If you're worshiping what everybody else thinks about you, public opinion, it's because you believe that fundamentally what your standing is in society in other people's eyes will save you. It'll save you from being an outcast or a reject or not accepted. And so you are a slave to the thing that you're worshiping. And this is a spiritual truth for every single one of us. And so you're a slave to a law. But the gospel sets us free from being a slave to the law. But what's it set us free to do? It sets us free to be a slave to righteousness, a slave to Christ, who is the best master of all. And I heard this illustration several years ago. I want to show you a picture. This is from 1932. This was the building of 30 Rock in New York City. This is called... it's famously called something. I think it's like Lunch from a Skyscraper, I think is the title of the photo. It was a Pulitzer Prize winning photograph. It was staged, but these guys are all iron workers. They set these guys up for the picture, but these guys did this every day. And this is from the 69th level of the building, taken in 1962. Now, I want you to imagine for a second what it would be like to be one of these guys walking across this beam 1,000 times a day in riveting and building this skyscraper in downtown New York. This picture makes me nervous. I don't even like to look at it. I mean, to think, and I'm don't have the best balance in the world, but these guys are sitting on a beam, eating lunch, hanging out, chilling like it's just another day. Now, around this time, there was another photo taken of the Golden Gate Bridge across the San Francisco Bay being built. And this is that photo. There's a distinct difference here. Do you notice the difference? Exactly. Well, the water, it'll still kill you. But the net, the net, now this net didn't always go there. Actually, multiple guys fell off the bridge as it was being built until the company at the time revolutionized the industry by putting up netting. They were the first ones to do it, and it became mandatory safety procedure from this point forward because of this building. And this is what the gospel does. The gospel sets us free from fear and condemnation, from the tyranny of other gods who demand complete and total obedience for our salvation. And the gospel puts a net underneath us so that we can lift our heads up from doing this number across the beam of life, worried about whether or not we're going to fall and plummet to our death. And it fixes our eyes upon Christ so that without fear of condemnation and death and destruction and maybe ultimate rejection, is that with eyes fixed on the author, perfecter, and finisher of our faith, we have a new vision. And we're not thinking about every step along the way, and we walk a path toward Christ and His glory. And it is still a path of obedience, but not with fear, but with a desire to please, a desire to attain, a desire to see. And the gospel lifts our heads. John Bunyan said it this way: "Run, John, run, the law commands, but gives us neither feet or hands. Far better news the gospel brings. It bids us fly and gives us wings." A rigid matter was the law, demanding bricks, denying straw. It's a reference to the Exodus, when Pharaoh demanded more and more and more bricks be made daily by the Israelite slaves, and then finally removed the straw from being provided them. Collect your own straw and make the bricks. A rigid matter was the law, demanding bricks, denying straw. But when, with gospel tongue it sings, with gospel tongue it sings, it bids me fly and gives me wings. And so I set my sights on Jesus in pursuit, knowing that even if I fall, even if I slip, the gospel has set me free, and it is my net that catches me, because Christ fulfilled all of the law for me and has set me free by His grace to obey. Blessed are the pure in heart. God, would you create in me a clean heart and renew a steadfast spirit in me? Would you delight my heart to obey your commands? Would you give me fuel and conviction and steadfastness and repentance when I'm disobedient, so that I might pursue holiness, so that I might pursue you? Let's make that our prayer this morning. Lord, we thank you for your word, and we do ask that you would draw near to us. Lord, I pray that any confusion in our own minds or hearts about what a pursuit of you looks like and is fueled by and how it happens, that if there is any of that in our minds, that you would clarify for us in these moments, that the gospel says that I am accepted for no other or better reason than that you gave your life for me. And because of that good news, with a heart that's been changed by grace, I want to be pleasing to you. The law and religion says if I would pursue you, then I would be saved by you. And it's the exact opposite. That I've been saved by you. And now everything in me wants to be pleasing to you. You tell us that in Titus 2:11 and 12. That by grace salvation has appeared to all men, teaching us to say no to ungodliness and worldliness. So Lord, I do ask that by your grace you would teach us to say no, that you would set Jesus up before our eyes as a heavenly vision of beauty and truth and goodness. And that the picture that we see of him would increasingly calls us and fuel for us a desire to say no to the sin within. Lord, we look forward to seeing you face to face. Come, Lord Jesus. Amen.